Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cleansing Our Hearts podcast. A while ago, Pop and I did a live recording on the subject of people leaving the church. This is the second part of the live recording. We hope you enjoy. I mean, there's definitely a lot of good points. Jesus being the focus, yes. That is the main thing. And I think that really wraps up in point 2 of what you were talking about in this list that we have, weak preaching. I don't think the writer of this article that we're pulling, Chuck Lawless, thinks weak preaching is, only preaching about one thing. But it's low quality, low content, and frankly only teaches one thing. I think one of the hardest things for pastors, though, is teaching a sermon to those new in the faith, those in the middle of the faith, and those who are long in the faith, all at the same time. It's one of the hardest things. But I also think that, how do I want to put this? I think that while Jesus should be the centership, if we don't have a balance of everything that the Bible has, the love of God, the anger of God, the justice of God, the grace of God, that itself is weak preaching. When we don't have all the balance of all the attributes of God, and we focus on, we have, the hellfire of someone like Billy Graham, though Billy Graham probably didn't preach hellfire at the time, the super lovey acceptance of the liberal churches. You're going to lose a lot there because it's going to be so focused on one thing that you don't get the entire thing in one thing, which is why I love how the church is set up as you have the preacher and then you have all these teachers who are doing their work. A preacher cannot sit there and get to everybody every week. He can try, but I definitely think he can definitely fail in that because one, he is human. I don't know. I definitely think that this list is all good 12 things, and yes, I think the ultimate purpose in a church is definitely the failure. Ultimate purpose in a church is the point to focus on Christ, and I think a failure in that will lead to all 12 of these. Shall I continue with my 6 and try to continue this conversation?
Yeah, go for it. You're
All
getting
right.
some good insights here.
I think so. I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. I'm going to approach each one and talk about one. So I'm going to start at number 7, burnout, which is one that actually really applies to me. Because if you notice our schedule here in this Discord, I'm doing book club, prayer meeting, and I'm doing this audiobook thing every day.
Man, you're just a rock star.
Yeah, I'm stupid, is what it is.
You're just a rock star. That's all.
No, the description of burnout here is members who are really faithful to a local church at times overcommit themselves to the basic needs of the church. Few people are willing to admit they're just worn out, so some will simply just leave instead. I think this is absolutely true, but I think there's another set of people who will just constantly work and work and work because other people won't. So I think the question is, Pop. The first question I'm going to pop at you, if I'm allowed to use that pun, is how are we able to tell that someone is burnt out? How can you say, if you can look at me and say, I'm burnt out?
Hmm. That's a good point. Well, for one, I would say you're burnt out because of the schedule from the last 2 weeks.
That is absolutely true. Yo, 4 day every day for 4 days. Let's listen to this audiobook. Oopsie, I'll forget about it easily. Get distracted by general chat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think to your point, I think it's like two things. It's one, someone has to be brave enough to tell you that you're doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you've got to allow yourself to be humble enough to hear what, the person is saying to you that's telling you need to, maybe slow down. Because I,
Mm-hmm.
I think to your point, and this is a good point, if like I know for me, sometimes I can become so on fire for the Lord that why stop?
Hmm. And you know what's funny is you actually answered my second question.
Oh,
The second question was, how can we help someone who is burnt out? I definitely think that being smacked across the face and just being burnt out, and I think how that person responds to that being burnt out, because you have experienced this in our leadership meetings. You know, I've said a couple months ago, I was like, I'm doing too much, and I stepped back. You know, I'm not sitting there saying I need to leave. You know, I think it definitely works into the heart of the person. Yes, we can work ourselves to the bone, but how we respond to it is also a big thing. You know, when we realize, oh, we're doing too much, really shows the heart of the person. Excuse me. All right. The next one, no connectedness. Connectedness. I hate that phrase.
how about no connection?
No connections. Yeah,
Yeah,
no
no.
connections. Let's go with no connections is next. Lonely church members, regardless of whether they're lonely because the church is unfriendly or because they choose not to get involved, don't usually commit for the long haul in the church. All right. Let's talk about this. Is it biblical to force someone to be involved?
I don't think it's well. I don't think it's biblical to force someone to be involved, but
Mm-hmm.
I do think.
I'm absolutely in agreement, but you know,
Yeah.
I think you're starting to get where I'm coming with this.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Bible talks about like love and compassion, but the Bible also talks about like absolute service. And when we say that, just read the book of Acts. If you look at the apostles and the early church, they gave up everything for Jesus. And I think sometimes, like, if the apostles gave up everything to bring people into the church, why are we so afraid to engage those that are new to the church?
I think that's a combination of, at least for as a millennial, I'll come from it from my natural tendencies. It's easier to be um open online. I'll tell you that if Pace did not, you know, almost 1 year ago, if Pace didn't ask for someone to step up and take a Bible study because he was out, I would have never done it. Yeah,
Thing
I
is not here
think
to hear that.
what?
Good thing he's not here to hear that.
Yeah, I think he is.
No,
Did he
he's not.
leave? He left. He left. Oh, I have to edit that out. You know, I think some people are naturally not outgoing. You have the introverts, the people who need to get attached to people to like get open and whatnot, and then the pure extroverts. I'm that middle person. Is that I need to get to know someone before I talk. You know, I'll always tell this to to the day I'll die. When I joined this server and Pace added me, I didn't respond. I didn't know who Pace was. I was one of my best friends on the server. What the heck? Thinking back on that, I mean, I think the major problem is who you are. Each one of us has a different gift. And sometimes you'll have preaching that leads us to not necessarily accept people as much as we should, or you'll have a church that's so big it's harder to know who is consistently coming. You know, we have I'll call it the mega church in my area that meets in essentially a gym, has probably 200 to 300 chairs in there and has 4 services a week. That's a lot of people to take care of, and you probably don't know who's visiting and whatnot. There's just too many people. But Pop, how should we try and deal with these people who seem outliers, who come for the service and maybe leave quite quickly? or the ones who don't engage? How do you think we should help them? How should we deal with them?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There's so many things that go into like greeting someone or engaging with someone. For me, it's really difficult not to think of it as like not to think of someone as a statistic because my job like is all about statistics and getting people to click on an email that we sent out and like take a product at my company.
But I
Or
also, if I may intercede,
yeah.
I think that is a prime example of how can you come from that. That's you're probably the hardest thing. How can you come from that? How would you approach that? I think you probably have the best insight right now.
Mm, I think the best way to do it is just like get up to them and talk to them. And I think it works for both introverts and extroverts, and I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
When people come to church, they're not coming necessarily for a good time. They're not coming for necessarily a show. They're coming because they either have a desperate need for Jesus and a heavy desire to interact with his church, or they're coming because they're broken and they've tried everything else and they don't know what else to do. So when they come in with like from that state, even the most extraordinary introvert can become well, they'll talk to you because they just need help. And I think a lot of times they'll come like I know for me when I came back to the church like 6, 7 years ago, it was really difficult to stay because I remember Satan at the time. Just I didn't realize it was him at the time, but looking back on it, he was telling me I don't, the church was wrong. It was not a place of of healing, and I shouldn't be there. I'll find it somewhere else. And I really wanted to leave, but something kept me there. And there were some people there saw that I was new, and they came and talked to me, and ultimately that's how I got to the church that I was at. But I think we, as a church body, we just need to not only engage you guys more, but we need to be more friendly in general.
I definitely
Like,
think
you know,
that shows the heart of a good church is someone who comes up to you and is friendly.
mhm.
I have a story from my church where the church actually had a visitor, and people went up to her, said hi. She walked out and said, "People don't want me in there. People don't want me in there." But then again, people were coming up and saying, hello, greeting her. But for some reason, she felt that everybody in the church did not want her there. Now, the elders of the church specifically thought that it was like the work of Satan or something, which I totally can see. That or she was holding it in, resisting that call to be in the church more. But it's just an interesting. I think the story is a great example of an opposite of someone who is still resistant, even though they're still open. But these guys were talking to her, getting her to talk about it. And that's definitely a good foot in the door. Of sometimes you'll be, yes, it's great to be friendly. I'll agree there. But how do you? I think these are both two great instances of things that can happen. Thank you for listening to the Cleansing Our Hearts podcast. I've been Esk.
And this is Popsicle.
And we thank you for listening, and we hope God blesses your week.